I just want to come back on here and let y'all know how God works. God works in mysterious ways. I've had something written up and written down for the part 2 of Don't Be a Slave to Your Flesh. But God spoke, and when God spoke, and when God moves, I move. I don't move in my own time. I don't move in my own way. So I'm believing that Don't Be a Slave part 2 is what this video is. Who or what is your God? It's something that we have to really think about. Something we have to really reevaluate. I'm not going to even delete that. I'm going to continue with this. And so it just makes you really think, what are you idolizing? Even if it's people, there's a difference between having a role model and you idolizing man and idolizing people in particular. Those things are your God. Those things aren't the things that's waking you up every morning. Those things aren't the things that's keeping you up. Those things are not giving you inner strength. Those things are filling voids with cracks in it. So it's going to continue to seep out. But when God fills you up, he gives you a solid foundation. He gives you a solid foundation. So just really think about that. Who or what is your God? The devil is working today, I promise you. This is the third time that I've attempted to start this video. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to stop. That was the plan, for me to get frustrated and stop. But I'm going to continue anyway. So I'm not going to may not be looking face at the camera because I'm actually talking. But like I was saying, the 3 things, this is going to sound very repetitive, but it's a point for it to be repetitive as well. The 3 things that I feel our people today are a slave to is sex, drugs, and money. Now, I feel like drugs is something that's more comprehensible. When I say that, I mean it's something that we are aware of. It's something that's easily seen, something that we know is a sin. We comprehend. We can be all in with God. We understand that. And we know not to cross that barrier, right? It's something we know not to cross, right? But yet we do. Now, someone who may be already involved in drugs, someone who may be addicted to drugs, someone who uses drugs as coping mechanism, and they're in that. They're in that cycle. They're in that cycle. That drug has become their God because they became a slave to it. When you have to drink alcohol to release the anxiety and pressures of the world, it becomes your God. But if you want to look at it for real, we're going to look at sex and money. Now, when you look at these 2 things, when I say sex, I'm talking about companionship just in general. And when I'm talking about sex, I'm talking about soul ties too. Because you don't have to have sex with somebody for your soul to be tied to them necessarily. You do not. You do not have to have sex for your soul to be tied to somebody. Now, when you look at these 2 things, I feel like these are the 2 things that's most avoidable topics, something that people don't really discuss. They can be all in with God, but not comprehending. It's like they're aware that it's a sin, but don't have that comprehension and understanding. Especially when it comes to sex, they don't have that comprehension and understanding of what they have gotten themselves involved to and how to let go of it. Now, talking about relationships and soul ties, that's another topic for another day. Now, money. As we all know, something that's been said for years, for centuries, for decades. Money is what? The root of all evil. Now, our society, and if you want to look at our society in particular, you want to be very specific, not just on the basis of religion, but very specific about our race of people. We have become a slave to sex, drugs, and money because of the industry. We become a slave to. We have forced these things to be a norm to our people. But if you want to go back a little bit, like I said in my previous part 1, and this is just flowing, anything that you can't live without, anything, the first thing that you think about, first thing that's on your mind, the last thing that you go to sleep thinking about is your God. Because the first thing you should do when you wake up in the morning is thank God for waking you up, for giving you breath, for giving you life. But the way our world and our society is, the first thing we do is what? We go on our phones. The first thing we do, we're thinking about, especially the thoughts that you have late at night, are the things that we really should start to consider, because that's when the temptation, that's when the sinful thoughts, like a poem I wrote, the sinful thoughts come alive. That's when those deeper emotions begin to unleash at night. That's in those late hours, that's when things start to unleash. Now, with companionship, sex, we're all in with God. We're aware. We know that it's a sin to have sex before marriage. But having sex before marriage is no greater sin than lying. Discord. There's no sin that's greater. There isn't. Those are all on the same playing field. They all are. And so when you sit here and you look at the companionship, it's those soul ties. You can be all in with God, but it's like we miss these little details. Not understand these three things are the things that we've been worshiping. We've been worshiping lust. We've been worshiping sex. We've been worshiping money. We've been worshiping drugs. We've been worshiping drugs to give us that release. Because why? Because we've been looking for fulfillment in man, and man couldn't fulfill it. So we went to the next best thing, which was drugs, instead of going to God. Same with sex. Those voids. People are trying to fill voids, trying to fill emptiness. And those emotions and those desires that they feel as though that is love, and that's lust. That's temptation. It's not love. It's not love. It's lust. It's temptation. And we fall into those cycles of those things, constantly going back and back into those cycles instead of going to God. We look to man to fill voids, and look to man to fill things and fulfillments that only God can. And God, like I said in that little first half, God is a jealous God. And if you think that whatever you have out in this world is going to be better than what God has for you, you have another thing coming. Because that's not how it's going to work. That's not how it's going to work at all. Because best believe what you choose and what you seek after and what you sought after, it can't compare. And that's why I think it's very important the things that we think, because we can manifest things. You be careful of the thoughts you think and how often you think them, because you can start to manifest things in your life. And just because something that you thought is manifested does not mean that it's something for you to dive into. Doesn't mean it's a place for you. It doesn't at all. Sometimes we're manifesting toxic relationship. We're manifesting discord. We're manifesting disruption and destruction into our own lives because of the way that we think about things. We'll become a slave to those things, constantly becoming slaves to the world and man. But I feel like sometimes people don't even understand that that's what they're doing because of these, especially with the companionships. People get into these relationships. They're not married. I'm not judging a soul because nobody on God's green earth is perfect. Not a soul. But we get into these relationships. We get into these partnerships. We get into these little situations. And we look for them. Just like if somebody, the things that you idolize is your God. You idolize a relationship, you idolize a marriage, you idolize in those things. It's like God is not going to give you these things until you become on a level where you can have it. Not saying, when there's in between wanting and needing something. When you feel as though you cannot live without it, you feel as though you cannot be whole or complete without it, then you're not ready for it in the first place. God is not going to give you something that you feel as though will complete you, because you go into a partnership, you go into that companionship looking for your purpose mate. But in order to find that purpose mate, you are whole within yourself. You're bringing two complete people together. And that's the problem with our society. We have broken people mending themselves together. And they're mending themselves not with love and not with God and not with building up into God, but building up with sex, building up with lust, building up with drugs and money. All those things kind of coincide with those companionships. We build ourselves up with those things thinking that they're going to fulfill us only for a temporary relief. Now, I've never done drugs, but as a drug addict would, it's like a drug addict. It's like that tolerance. That tolerance keeps growing, right? Somebody keeps doing drugs. That tolerance is going to keep growing because they've gotten used to it, and they're going to need a quick fix or whatever they call it to get them straight, right? You're going to need more and more and more of it, and that's how you draw yourself in a deep hole. But a lot of us are on the surface right now. A lot of us are on the surface. We say that we're all in with God, but yet we want these things. And people, they let go of almost everything but that little piece, whether it's sex, money, or drug, the desires of the world. Who are you trying to please? That's another question. Like whoever you're trying to please and whoever you are looking to validate you is your God as well. It becomes your God when it's what you look to for fulfillment, when it's what you look and go to instead of turning to God. And we were just like Jonah. Jonah ran. Jonah was a runner. He understood what he was supposed to do. He understood his calling and where he wound up in. The belly of a whale. Right? And he wasn't released until what? Okay, God. And I'm not saying it how the story went, but I'm going to say it in my way. Okay, God, look, God. Okay, I understand now. Because God set up things and set up barriers. He set that wind, the ship, just like with Paul on his way to Malta, the same thing. God redirected that path. That's how God works. Because you think, if you know, and that's the problem too, if you know and you're aware of what God is calling you, running from God, because you become that to an extent, that's because you think that you're your own God. I'm going to tell you that because Jonah thought that he knew better. And God showed him that you didn't. That's why you're tailing that well now. You're going to sit there until you get it together. That's how I feel like God talks, especially to me. It's like, I told you this. You understand. And I call this selective spirituality. When you understand what God's saying, you want to pick and choose pieces out of it to say, okay, God meant this, God meant... No, you know exactly what God meant. And your tail gonna run back and do what you were doing anyway. And what happened to Jonah? The tail was in that belly of that whale. It sat there until the Lord made it vomit. Made it vomit. Because when you know your calling, when you know what you are supposed to be in God and you run away, it's like you're becoming your own God, because you are choosing your own selfish beliefs over what God has said to you. How can you doubt what God has already approved, right? How can we sit here and doubt what God's approved? How can we? God has made it clear. God has made that path and that plan apparent to you, but because you want to think about your own ways, you want to think about the ways of the world and what the world thinks. Oh, the world must be your God, because that's the approval that you're waiting on. So we become a slave to that too. A slave to our own ways, a slave to our bad habits. It takes 21 days to create a new habit. 21 days to shift that mindset. Are you going to shift it is the question. The question is, are you going to shift that mindset? Are you going to shift it? Is that what you're going to do? Because it takes 21 days to do it. Are you ready? That's the question. God wants to know, are you ready to shift? Are you ready to change your mind? Are you ready to be all in? Or are you going to keep straddling the fence? Are you going to think that you're all in when you know there's a teeny piece? You think that this small little thing in you that you do is all right in God, and it's not. And you want to be elevated? You want it to be moved up? Oh, no, you don't. No, that's not what you want. You want to be your own God, because you think that if you do it your way, this is going to turn out right. Jonah thought that running was going to get him to where he was going to go, and it didn't. And where Jonah wound up at. It's funny because it's real. It's funny because it's true. I mean, just think about it. Adam and Eve falling into temptation, like from the very beginning. Cain and Abel. Come on, because jealousy, we want to get into that topic, talk about jealousy and envy. Those are toxic habits and ways as well. Because we're looking for fulfillment from somebody else and approval. And that's the problem. Don't worry about what God, and that's another thing, don't worry about what God is doing with somebody else. Worry about what God is working on with you. That's our problem too. Focus on what God is trying to work in you. Don't worry about what God is doing in somebody else and start to doubt. Because what God is doing is, you don't know what is really on the inside of somebody else. You don't know, because you're not them. Don't worry about what God is working on with somebody. Work on you. Focus on you. Figure out what you are a slave to. Because you need to be a servant of God. Serve God. Because in order for you to be elevated, you have to be willing to serve first. If you can't serve, and you think God's going to elevate you because you look at yourself so highly, and you think that God going to elevate. No, you're going to stay right there. You're going to stay right there until your attitude changes. Because oftentimes we wind up in a situation we're in, that cycle and that test keeps coming because of our reactions to the situation. The reactions to your situation is the part and area of your life that's under attack. And until you get that under control, you're not moving anywhere. You're going to stay right there. Why do these things keep happening to me? Well, why do you keep reacting the same way? Is what we start to ask ourselves. And when you become to a point where you're aware that you're in the test, and you're in a cycle, then you're moving in the right direction. Because now you can start to reassess and readjust. Okay, if I do this differently, if I look at God's way, if I get in my Bible and I study my word and I see the situation that I'm placed in is similar to the ones that these people I went through and how they gone through it and made it out. My life is kind of like Job, right? Though you slay me, yet will I trust in you. You slayed me for many years, God. But I'm going to trust in you, and I'm going to take your way over my own. That's the point that we have to get to. Do not be a slave to your flesh. Do not be a slave to man. Sex, drugs, and money are the top things. These false narratives that we live in this reality where we think that our way is better. That's the number one problem, I feel like. We think that we're our own God. You think, oh, you're your own God. So you woke yourself up this morning? You woke yourself up this morning. You did all this on your own. And that's another thing. We take too much credit for things. I mean, I'm not taking credit for nothing. It's God. It's not me. It's God. God put it within me. God instilled it inside of me. And because of my faith and belief in God, it's unleashed. That doesn't make me any better than anybody. That's just me being a person that's striving to be closer and closer and closer to God on this walk. And that's something we got to do. Stop worrying about how close you think somebody else is with God. Stop thinking that God can't be there for you and somebody else. He knows us by name. He knew the plans that he had for us before we got to this earth. He knows what he's put inside of it. We so busy searching here and here, looking to man for all the things that's right here. It's all right here. It's all within inside you, and you have to be willing and ready to unleash it. Now, I think I'm going to end that right here and get going because I'm in the parking lot right now, and something came over me. This will be up today, but I hope you enjoy it.